After his wife left, he had nothing. Until his dog led him to a mountain paradise. Snow fell like torn paper from a grey sky, blanketing the empty street outside 42 Birch Hollow Road. The foreclosure notice on the door flapped in the wind, its edges curled, the ink running from wet flakes. Cole Barrett stood there in silence, hands raw from cold and work, watching everything he'd built dissolve into the quiet. Inside, the house was stripped bare. Furniture gone, laughter gone, even the smell of pine cleaner his wife used every Sunday. Sarah's side of the closet hung open, just wire hangers left swinging. 25 years of marriage reduced to empty drawers, and a faint trace of perfume fading into air. Cole didn't cry. He hadn't cried when she packed the suitcase that morning either. He'd just watched, like a man witnessing a fire from the wrong side of the glass. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She just said, "I can't do this anymore," and left the keys on the counter. Then she was gone. Ruger sat by the door, silent at first, tail still, chest rising slow, a big shepherd mix with a dark saddle coat and eyes the color of steel. The kind of eyes that didn't just look, they studied. When Cole stepped outside, Ruger followed, his paws sinking into the snow. The dog stopped at the edge of the porch and turned his head sharply toward the tree line. Cole frowned. "What is it?" Ruger didn't move. His ears were forward, his stance rigid. Then came the bark, a deep, thunderous sound that echoed down the street. One bark, then another. Not fear, not play. A warning. Cole scanned the dark fringe of pines. Nothing moved, nothing visible. But there, between the swirling snowflakes, a faint shadow slipped behind a trunk. A figure, maybe. Too fast to tell. Cole blinked, and it was gone. He exhaled, his breath fogging. "It's just the wind, boy." Ruger didn't believe him. He took a few steps down the driveway, nose low, tail stiff. His growl rolled through the frozen air, low and steady. "Come on," Cole said, tugging gently at the collar. Ruger resisted, then relented, glancing once more toward the woods before following him back to the truck. The house looked smaller as Cole opened the driver's side door. The bank's lockbox already hung on the doorknob, a bright red tag reading, "Repossessed." He stared at it for a moment. "You ever notice how they make these things bright so everyone knows you failed?" Ruger whined softly, pressing his muzzle against Cole's coat. Cole rubbed his head. "Yeah, me neither." He climbed into the old pickup, started the engine, and watched his breath fog the windshield. The cab smelled of sawdust and coffee that had burned too long on a work site. Ruger sat in the passenger seat, alert, watching the rearview mirror like he expected someone to appear behind them. The first mile out of town was silent, except for the squeal of the wipers and the crunch of frozen gravel, under tires. Then Ruger barked again, once, his gaze fixed on the mirror. Cole looked back, nothing but falling snow and the faint outline of his house shrinking in the distance. But for a brief second, he thought he saw movement at the edge of the property, a tall man, coat dark, standing half in shadow. Watching. Cole blinked. Then it was gone. He tightened his grip on the wheel. "Forget it. We're done with that place." The snow thickened, swallowing the last traces of town. Streetlights faded behind curtains of white. Ruger's reflection in the window flickered with passing headlights, two eyes shining against the storm. Cole drove for hours, north toward the Bitterroot Mountains. His father had taken him there once, decades ago, a rough trip into a place where the world still felt wild and unowned. He hadn't been back since the old man disappeared. When the gas gauge hit empty, he pulled into a small station at the edge of nowhere. The lights buzzed, casting long yellow stripes across the snow. Ruger leapt out first, sniffing the air, then froze again. His ears twitched, muscles coiled. "What now?" Cole muttered, closing the truck door. Ruger's stare locked onto the tree line beyond the lot. This time, there was no mistake. A flicker of movement, someone ducking behind a snowdrift, a shadow breaking pattern with the wind. Cole's pulse climbed. He walked to the rear of the truck, his boots crunching in the snow. Who's there? No answer, just the hiss of wind across frozen asphalt. Then a shape, a man's silhouette, tall and narrow, moving along the roadside before fading into the dark. Ruger barked once, then twice, sharp enough to echo off the station walls. Cole reached into the cab, grabbed the flashlight, and swept it across the trees. Empty. The clerk came out from behind the counter, peering through the glass. You see something? Cole shook his head. Just shadows. The clerk gave a half smile. Out here, shadows look back. Cole didn't reply. He filled the tank, paid cash, and climbed back in. The heater barely worked. Ruger's breath clouded the air, his eyes still on the side mirror. Don't start again, Cole said quietly. It's just us now. But Ruger didn't settle. His gaze stayed fixed, body rigid, as if waiting for the world to make its next move. By dawn, the highway curved into the mountains, where frost coated every pine needle like glass. The truck struggled up the grade, tires slipping on ice, until the pavement ended and a narrow logging road began. Cole turned off the main path, following instinct more than memory. The farther they drove, the quieter the world became. Only the engine's hum and Ruger's steady breathing filled the space. When they reached a clearing, Cole stopped. The remains of a stone foundation sat half buried under snow, 4 walls of someone's life long gone. He stepped out, stretching his stiff legs, and looked around. Guess this is it. Ruger jumped down beside him, nose to the wind. Then, as if pulled by something unseen, he trotted toward the far side of the ruins. He stopped suddenly, pawing at the ground. Cole followed, kneeling beside him. Beneath the snow, something glinted, metal. He brushed away the ice and unearthed an old folding knife, its handle carved with faded initials. B.B. Cole's breath caught. Barrett, my old man. Ruger looked up at him, eyes steady, ears perked. Cole stared at the knife, then at the mountains rising beyond the tree line. You led me here, didn't you? Ruger wagged his tail once, just once, and sat back on his haunches, eyes never leaving Cole's face. For the first time in months, Cole felt something other than loss. He felt purpose, fragile but alive. He turned to the clearing, to the ruins, to the endless white stretching beyond. All right, boy, he said, tucking the knife into his jacket. Let's build something nobody can take from us. In the distance, between the trees, a figure watched, motionless, unseen. Ruger's ears flicked. He let out one sharp bark that echoed through the valley, then fell silent again. The wind shifted, carrying the sound far down the mountain. And somewhere beyond the ridge, something, or someone, listened back. By morning, the storm had thinned to a whisper. The world outside the truck was white and still, except for the slow, rhythmic breath of the dog beside him. Ruger raised his head first, ears flicking at the faint crackle of branches above. Cole followed his gaze. No wind, no movement, only silence thick enough to hear his own heartbeat. He stepped out, boots sinking into the untouched snow. The air smelled clean, sharp with pine and frost. Around him, the mountains stretched wide, their ridges swallowed by mist. Guess this is home for now, he muttered. Ruger jumped down, landing softly, nose already working the air. He trotted ahead, scanning the open clearing where the ruins sat like the ribs of a forgotten animal. Stones from the old foundation peeked through the frost, arranged in a rectangle that spoke of human hands long gone. Cole crouched and brushed the snow off one of the cornerstones. Beneath the moss, the chisel marks were still visible. His father's work, maybe. A wave of memory came unbidden. The old man's calloused hands teaching him how to square a joint, the rasp of saw teeth slicing through cedar, the smell of wet earth after rain. Ruger's sudden bark broke the spell. Cole spun around. The dog had wandered to the far edge of the site, nose buried in a drift. His tail stiffened. Then he began to dig, fast and deliberate. Snow flew in sprays behind him, each scoop revealing something buried beneath. "What have you got there?" Cole called, approaching slowly. Ruger growled softly, not in warning, but in focus. His claws scraped metal. Cole knelt beside him, brushing aside the frozen dirt. The glint came clearer. A blade, dulled by rust, but unmistakably crafted by hand. He pulled it free, wiping it clean against his coat. The handle was carved from walnut, smooth with age. Along its side, etched deep into the grain, were 2 letters. B.B. Cole froze. His throat tightened. Barrett. The air around him seemed to hold still. For the first time in 30 years, his father's name felt close enough to touch. Ruger sat back, watching him, head tilted. The wind shifted and carried the faint groan of trees. Cole closed his fist around the knife. "You found this," he said quietly. "You led me right to it." Ruger blinked once, slow and sure. Cole looked around the clearing again, at the broken timbers and the half-buried stones. "So he was here," he murmured, "and maybe he never left." He stood, tucking the knife into his jacket pocket. "All right, partner, let's build him something that lasts this time." By afternoon, the clearing echoed with the rhythm of work. Cole gathered the fallen beams, testing each one with a builder's instinct. He cleared the snow off the foundation, measured with an old carpenter's eye, and began to piece together the frame. The motion came back to him like muscle memory, the swing of a hammer, the snap of rope, the hiss of breath through frozen air. Ruger moved alongside him constantly, weaving between piles of lumber, sniffing out nails, dragging sticks twice his size across the clearing. Every few minutes he'd stop, ears pricked towards the woods, tail low but steady. "Keep watch then," Cole said, hammering another joint into place. "You're head of security now." Ruger gave a single bark as if to confirm the promotion, then circled the perimeter with the patience of a soldier. By dusk, the first walls stood upright, crooked but standing. The sun dipped low behind the ridge, washing the valley in gold that melted into blue. Smoke rose thin from the small fire Cole built near the stones. He heated a can of soup, sharing half with Ruger, who waited politely before taking it. The quiet settled again, heavy and alive. Cole leaned back against a log, staring at the half-built cabin. "You think he meant for me to find this place?" Ruger looked up from his bowl, then turned his gaze toward the forest. His ears twitched. A low sound escaped him, not a bark this time, but a deep, rolling growl that vibrated through the air. Cole froze. "What is it?" Ruger stood, body tense, nose high. He took 3 steps toward the tree line, every muscle locked in alert. The forest didn't move. No birds, no wind, then a crunch. Snow shifting under weight. Cole grabbed the hatchet from the stump. "Who's out there?" The sound stopped. Ruger's growl deepened. He moved forward a few feet, then suddenly halted, head cocked to the side as if listening. Cole's breath fogged in the cold. The trees loomed silent, their trunks fading into darkness. He thought he saw a flicker, a reflection maybe, or a glint of glass. Then nothing. "Come on, boy," he whispered. "Back." Ruger hesitated, eyes fixed on the spot. Then he backed away, slow, never turning his back to the trees. They retreated to the cabin. Cole tossed another log on the fire, the sparks crackling into the night. "You've been jumpy since we got here," he said quietly. "You know something I don't." Ruger's ears twitched, but he didn't move. He lay down facing the door, chin on his paws, eyes open and unblinking. The wind picked up again, sweeping across the clearing like the breath of something ancient. Snow began to fall, thick and soft. Cole sat in the glow of the firelight, running his thumb along the knife's handle. The carved initials caught the orange flicker, shining faintly. "You left this for me, didn't you, old man?" He murmured. He looked at Ruger, whose gaze remained fixed on the dark beyond the doorway. "And maybe you knew where to find it." The dog blinked once, slow and calm, as if agreeing. When Cole finally lay down, exhaustion creeping in, Ruger stayed awake. His eyes glowed faint in the firelight, trained on the forest edge where the shadows shifted too smoothly to be wind. Somewhere deep among the pines, a second pair of eyes glimmered briefly, watching, waiting, before vanishing into the snow. Ruger's ears flicked once, then he exhaled through his nose, low and steady, and kept his silent vigil until dawn. By the third morning, the snow had hardened into a crust, reflecting light like shattered glass. Cole worked in silence, clearing the last pile of debris from what used to be a back wall. Each swing of his shovel echoed in the empty valley. Ruger stayed close, pacing the perimeter like a sentry. His paws crunched softly against the frost, nose twitching at every drift of scent that rolled down from the ridge. Cole leaned on the shovel, breathing into his gloves. "We're getting there, old boy. Another few days and we might have 4 walls again." Ruger wasn't listening. He'd wandered to a sunken corner near the edge of the ruins and started digging with purpose. Not the random kind of digging dogs did for fun. This was focused, deliberate. Snow and dirt flew behind him in sharp bursts. Cole frowned. "What now?" Ruger's claws hit metal. The sound was hollow, clean. He barked once and stepped back, tail low but wagging slowly. Cole knelt and cleared the rest with his hands. Under the frozen soil lay a rusted tin box, edges eaten by time. He pried it loose and set it on a flat stone. The latch resisted, then gave with a groan. Inside, wrapped in what used to be waxed cloth, was a folded sheet of yellowed paper. He unfolded it carefully. A map. Hand-drawn, the ink faded but still visible. Contour lines, a stream, a clearing marked with a small cross, and one word printed in block letters across the top. "Haven." Cole's heart thudded. He turned the paper toward the light. The handwriting was familiar, his father's precise, no-nonsense script. Beneath the cross, a note in smaller print. "If you get lost, find Haven. The mountain keeps its own." He sat back, snow creaking beneath his boots. "You were here," he whispered. "You wanted me to find this?" Ruger tilted his head, ears flicking. He sniffed the box once more, then the air. His hackles lifted slightly, a ripple of instinct rolling through him. Cole followed his gaze to the forest edge. The pines stood still, but something about the quiet felt off. No birds, no wind, just the faint echo of movement too far to see. "Probably a deer," he said, though his voice didn't sound convinced. He folded the map and slipped it into his jacket. "Come on, let's get some cover before dark." They pitched a makeshift tent from the tarp and a few stripped branches. Ruger lay at the entrance, head up, eyes fixed on the darkening tree line. The fire crackled weakly, its light drawing long orange shapes across the snow. Cole studied the map again by firelight. The cross wasn't far, maybe 2 miles east, along what looked like an old stream bed. He traced the route with his finger, remembering the stories his father used to tell him when he was young. How the mountains had their own language, how they spoke to those who listened. "Guess you're doing the listening for both of us," he said softly. Ruger didn't move. His eyes glowed faintly in the light, unblinking. Later that night, the fire began to die. The wind picked up, carrying a low hum through the trees. Cole shifted in his sleeping bag, half awake. Then he heard it, a growl deep and steady. Ruger's. Cole sat up fast. What is it? The dog was at the doorway of the tarp shelter, body stiff, ears locked forward. He didn't bark. He only growled, the sound vibrating through the cold air. Cole grabbed the flashlight and flicked it on, sweeping the beam through the clearing. Snow fell in lazy spirals, the world painted in silver and black. For a moment he saw nothing. Then the light caught a flicker, a figure between the trees, small, thin, moving fast. "Hey!" he called. The shape froze, then vanished into the woods. Ruger barked once, lunging forward, but Cole caught his collar. "No, stay." He listened. Only wind, no footsteps, no voices. But the stillness that followed felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. "Someone's out there," Cole said quietly. Ruger whined, nose twitching toward the spot where the figure had disappeared. His fur bristled from neck to tail, body vibrating with restrained energy. Cole stoked the fire higher, feeding it until the flames stood tall and defiant. "Let them watch. We're not leaving." Ruger settled again, reluctantly, curling himself so his head rested between his paws, but his eyes stayed open. His breathing stayed low and even, the kind of focus that came from training no man could teach. By morning, the snow had stopped. Cole woke to pale sunlight and silence. Ruger was already up, pacing the edge of the clearing, nose to the ground. "What is it now?" Ruger stopped near the trees and barked twice, sharp. Cole followed and saw them. Footprints. Small ones. A child's size. Barely pressed into the snow, leading away from the clearing and deeper into the forest. Cole crouched, tracing one with his glove. "No boots," he murmured. "No treads. Whoever this is, they're light. And they've been here a while." Ruger whined again, pressing his nose into one of the prints. His tail moved once, uncertain. Cole straightened, scanning the ridge beyond. The trail disappeared into shadow, swallowed by the woods. A kid? Out here? The thought tightened something in his chest. Ruger looked up at him, waiting for the signal. Cole hesitated, eyes flicking toward the rebuilt foundation, the fire pit, the box with the map. A voice inside him whispered to stay put, to finish the shelter, to keep things simple. But Ruger's stare held him. It wasn't impatience, it was conviction. "You think this is why we're here?" Ruger gave a short, quiet bark. Cole exhaled. "All right, we'll follow." He slung his pack over one shoulder and tucked the folded map into his coat. The knife his father left him hung at his belt, the initials still visible through the tarnish. The trail wound into the trees, faint but steady. Ruger led, nose low, tail steady. Cole followed close behind, boots crunching softly. The forest swallowed them quickly. Behind them, the fire at the camp flickered out, leaving only a thin line of smoke curling into the pale sky. And somewhere ahead, deep in the pines, something small and human moved just out of sight, leaving prints that didn't wander, but led with purpose. Ruger paused once, turned his head back toward Cole, and gave a quiet rumble, not of fear, but certainty. They weren't alone on this mountain anymore. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was a dull gray above the valley. The next it split open like something alive, spilling white fury down the mountain. Wind screamed through the pines, snapping branches, bending them until they cracked. Cole barely had time to secure the tarp over the half-built cabin before the first wall of snow hit. "Inside, Ruger!" he shouted. The dog bounded into the frame of the cabin, fur already crusted with ice. Cole followed, slamming the doorframe shut against the wind that clawed at it. The fire inside hissed as flakes blew through the cracks. For hours the storm howled, The roof moaned under the weight of snow. Ruger lay close to Cole, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Every so often, he'd lift his head, listening, as if something outside was whispering through the chaos. Cole tried to keep the fire alive. His hands shook as he fed it the last of the dry kindling. "We'll ride it out," he muttered. "We always do." Ruger gave a short whine. Then came the sound, sharp, violent like a gunshot. A crack tore through the cabin, followed by another. The beam above them split in two. "Move!" Cole yelled. They lunged toward the doorway as the roof gave way. Snow and timber crashed down, knocking Cole to the ground. His head hit something hard. The world flashed white. He tasted blood. The weight of the roof pressed against his shoulder, pinning him. "Ruger!" he gasped. A bark answered through the haze, a sound both distant and close. Then movement. Heavy, desperate movement. The dog dug at the snow, paw after paw, until Cole felt cold air hit his cheek. Ruger's muzzle appeared through the white, eyes wild, mouth flecked with ice. Good boy," Cole whispered, voice slurred. Ruger crawled in beside him, pushing his body against Cole's chest. The dog was trembling, but he pressed closer, curling tight to share his heat. Cole wrapped one arm weakly around him. Outside, the wind roared like a freight train. Inside, it was just heartbeats and the sound of breathing, human and animal, fighting to stay in rhythm. Time blurred. The storm raged through the night, shaking what was left of the cabin. Cole drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time he woke, Ruger was still there, body heavy, warmth steady. Once, when the cold tried to pull him under again, he felt a rough tongue swipe his cheek. It pulled him back to life. When the wind finally died, dawn crept over the mountains in shades of grey. Silence settled like dust. Cole stirred, groaning as the pain in his shoulder screamed awake. The roof had collapsed completely, leaving them half buried in snow. Ruger was already moving, digging a narrow tunnel toward light. He clawed and pushed until his head broke through the surface. Then he turned back, barking once, sharp and urgent. Cole gritted his teeth, pushing with his good arm. "Go!" he rasped. "Lead the way." Ruger disappeared up the tunnel. Cole followed, crawling through the snow until cold air hit his face like a slap. The world outside was unrecognizable. Trees were bent low under white weight, their branches frozen mid-motion. The cabin lay in ruins, a crushed skeleton under glittering frost. Cole dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Ruger circled him once, tail low, anxious. "We'll fix it," Cole said, half to himself. "We'll fix everything." But Ruger wasn't listening. He was staring at the ridge beyond the clearing, nose twitching. Then he started walking, slow at first, then faster, ears forward, body rigid with purpose. Cole called after him, but Ruger didn't stop. He followed a scent only he could sense, cutting across the field towards the tree line. Cole hesitated, then grabbed his pack and followed. They walked for nearly an hour, deeper into the woods, following the faint sound of water. Ruger didn't bark again, but his pace quickened. Cole's shoulder throbbed, every step burning through him, but he kept going. The air smelled different here, wet, metallic, alive. Then he heard it, the soft murmur of a stream beneath the snow. Ruger ran ahead, disappearing behind a fallen log. Cole followed, slipping down the icy bank, and froze. By the edge of the water lay a boy, 16, maybe younger, his face pale, lips blue. His clothes were soaked, torn. He was curled in on himself, hands clutched tight to his chest. "Oh, God!" Cole dropped beside him. He touched the boy's neck. A pulse, faint but there. "Hey," Cole said, shaking his shoulder gently. "Can you hear me?" No response. Only a shallow breath that fogged the air. Ruger circled the boy, sniffing carefully. Then he sat down beside him, whining softly, licking the frost from his cheek. Cole tore open his coat, wrapping it around the boy's body. He worked fast, rubbing his arms, trying to get blood moving. "Stay with me, kid." The boy stirred weakly, mumbling something too soft to catch. Cole leaned closer. "What's your name?" "Eli," came the whisper. "Eli Brooks." Ruger gave a low bark, as if acknowledging him. Cole looked down at the dog. "You found him, didn't you?" Ruger's tail moved once. His eyes met Cole's, calm, steady, certain. Cole nodded. "All right, let's get him out of here." He lifted Eli in his arms, the boy's weight limp but light. The path back would be hard, uphill through knee-deep snow, but there was no choice. Ruger trotted ahead, glancing back every few steps, checking on them like a guide. Halfway up the ridge, Cole slipped, nearly falling. Ruger turned and pressed his shoulder against Cole's leg, steadying him. "Good boy," Cole panted. "Keep leading." By the time they reached what was left of the cabin, the sun was breaking through the clouds. The storm had passed. Smoke still curled weakly from the ashes of the fire pit. Cole laid Eli near the coals, piling dry wood on top. Ruger stayed close, pressing against the boy's side to share warmth. As the flames caught, color began to creep back into Eli's face. His eyes fluttered open for a second, unfocused, but alive. Cole exhaled, his breath shaking. "You're going to be fine. You hear me?" Ruger lay between them, gaze sweeping the horizon, ears still attuned to something beyond sight. Cole followed his eyes to the tree line, where the snow was unbroken except for a single track. A large footprint, half buried, heading away from the stream. Not a boy's. He felt the chill crawl up his spine. "We're not alone up here," he whispered. Ruger didn't look away. He just kept watching the woods, silent, waiting for the next sound only he could hear. The boy didn't speak much the first day. He lay near the rebuilt fire, wrapped in every spare blanket Cole could find. His breathing was shallow but steady. The storm outside had broken into clear skies, sunlight glinting off the snow like shards of glass. Ruger stayed beside him, one paw resting gently on the edge of the blanket. Every time Eli stirred or shivered, the dog's ears flicked toward him. Cole brewed a pot of coffee on the coals, the steam curling through the cold air. He watched Ruger's quiet vigilance and shook his head. "You trust him already, huh?" Ruger's tail thumped once, but he didn't look away from the boy. By dusk, Eli woke fully. His voice was hoarse. Where am I?" "Up in Bitterroot," Cole said, crouching beside him. "You passed out near the creek. My dog found you." Eli blinked, confusion shifting into fear. "The woods. He was following me." Cole frowned. "Who?" "My stepdad," Eli whispered. His fingers tightened around the blanket. "He said if I ran again, he'd make sure I'd disappeared this time." Cole felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He'd seen that kind of fear before, in men returning from war, in his own reflection once or twice. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "Nobody's going to touch you." Ruger got up, walked over, and pressed his head against Eli's shoulder. The boy froze, then slowly raised a hand and patted the dog's fur. Ruger exhaled, a low huff of contentment. It was the first time Cole had ever seen him relax around a stranger. "That's new," Cole murmured. "He doesn't do that for anyone." Eli managed a faint smile. "Guess he knows I'm not lying." Cole went outside, chopping wood until the sun dipped below the ridge. The rhythm steadied him. Each swing sent warmth back into his arms and kept his thoughts from circling too deep. Inside, Ruger watched through the cracked door while Eli fed the fire, both of them learning the slow rhythm of survival. Over the next few days, the cabin began to change shape. Cole repaired the roof, hammered new supports from fallen logs, and built a second cot from scavenged planks. Eli helped where he could, hauling water from the stream, scraping ice off tools, laughing once when Ruger stole his gloves and buried them in the snow. It had been years since laughter lived inside those walls. Cole didn't realize how much he'd missed the sound until it returned. At night, when the wind rose, Cole would tell small stories by the fire, about the days before the house fell apart, before his wife left, before his father vanished into the mountains. Eli listened quietly, sometimes glancing toward the knife with the initials carved into the handle. "You think he meant for you to find this place?" he asked once. "I don't know," Cole said, "but I think Ruger did." The dog lifted his head at his name, tail sweeping once before settling again. There was a peace in that week, a fragile, borrowed peace that felt too good to last. And it didn't. It started the night the temperature dropped again. The air went sharp, every sound amplified. Cole was half asleep when Ruger suddenly stood. His low growl filled the cabin like thunder trapped in wood. Cole sat up instantly. "What is it?" Ruger didn't answer with another growl. He gave a single bark, loud, echoing, but different this time. Not a warning. A call. Cole grabbed the flashlight and pushed open the door. The cold hit him hard. Ruger stood at the edge of the clearing, tail straight, ears high, staring into the darkness. The snow glowed faint under the moonlight. "Talk to me, boy," Cole said softly, stepping beside him. Ruger turned his head slightly, eyes cutting towards the far side of the ridge. A light flickered there, briefly like a lantern being covered by a hand, then gone. Cole's stomach tightened. "Someone's up there." Ruger barked once more, not alarmed, almost expectant. Eli appeared at the door, rubbing his eyes. "What's happening?" Cole motioned for him to stay inside. "Might be a hiker." "It's midnight," Eli said, voice trembling. "Yeah," Cole muttered. "That's the problem." He swept the flashlight across the trees. The beam caught something, a movement, slow and deliberate, too controlled to be an animal. Then a sound floated down the ridge. A woman's voice. "Hello?" Cole froze. Ruger didn't move, but his tail dropped slightly, as if waiting for confirmation. The voice came again, closer this time. "I'm not armed." From the shadows, a figure emerged. She wore a heavy parka, snow caked to her boots. A badge gleamed faintly from her jacket. Her breath came in visible puffs. "Sheriff's Department," she said, lifting a gloved hand. "Name's Maya Donovan. You Cole Barrett?" Cole hesitated. "That depends who's asking." "I've been looking for a missing miner," she said, her gaze shifting past him to the cabin. "Name's Eli Brooks." Eli's small gasp came from behind him. Ruger stepped forward, sniffing the air between them. Maya's eyes softened when she saw him. "That's one hell of a shepherd," she murmured. "He looks like the K9 I lost years ago." Ruger circled her once, then sat, calm and still, as if deciding she belonged here. Cole lowered the flashlight. The snow continued to fall, silent but relentless. Maya took a slow breath. "I'm not here to take the kid back. I just need to know he's safe." Cole studied her face. It was worn but steady, the kind of tired that came from too many nights chasing the wrong endings. He nodded once. "He's safe. Ruger made sure of that." Maya smiled faintly. "I believe it." She glanced at the ruins of the cabin. "You building this place up again?" "Trying to." "Then maybe you'll understand," she said, her voice quieter now. "Sometimes a place like this doesn't just give shelter. It gives people a reason to stay." Cole followed her gaze toward the boy and the fire flickering inside. He looked down at Ruger, who met his eyes, calm and knowing. For the first time since he'd lost everything, Cole felt the truth settle in him. He wasn't here to run anymore. Ruger hadn't just saved his life. He'd led him to the reason to keep living it. The wind picked up again, sweeping across the trees. Somewhere in the distance, the cry of a wolf echoed through the valley. Ruger turned toward the sound, listening, his ears sharp against the cold. Cole put a hand on his head. "Let's see where this road takes us, boy." Ruger stood beside him, steady as the mountain, eyes fixed on the dark beyond the ridge, waiting for what came next. Snow crunched under Maya Donovan's boots as she followed the narrow trail up the ridge. The cold bit through her gloves, and each breath came out as a plume of frost. She had been in these mountains her whole life, but it had been years since she'd climbed this far into Bitterroot's backcountry. This time, she wasn't chasing a poacher or a lost hiker. She was following a missing person report. A boy. At the top of the ridge, smoke drifted from a clearing. A cabin, half-built and patchworked with tarps and salvaged timber, stood against the white slope. She slowed, hand resting on the radio at her shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Donovan. I've got visual on the structure. Possible occupants." Static answered. The signal was weak this high up. She sighed and pressed forward. As she stepped into the clearing, a deep bark ripped through the air. Ruger appeared first, a blur of muscle and fur. His bark shook through the valley like thunder. He came fast, stopping only a few feet away, shoulders squared, teeth bared, but not in rage, in warning. His eyes locked on hers, sharp and intelligent. "Easy," she said softly. A man came out from behind the wrecked cabin, one arm raised. "He's not going to bite unless you make him." Cole Barrett. The name matched the file she'd glanced at before leaving town, a local contractor who'd gone off the grid after losing his property. She lowered her hand slightly, but didn't relax. "Cole Barrett, Sheriff Donovan, Bitterroot County. You mind explaining what you're doing out here?" He gestured at the half-built roof. "Trying to keep what's left of my life from freezing." "And the kid?" she asked, her gaze flicking past him to the cabin. Eli appeared in the doorway, thin and pale, but alive. His hand clutched the dog's collar. Ruger didn't flinch. Maya took a cautious step closer. "You know harboring a missing minor is a serious offense, right?" Cole's voice was calm, measured. "He wasn't missing. He was running. There's a difference." Ruger growled, low and deep, as if punctuating the truth in Cole's words. Maya stopped, studying the dog more closely now. His stance, his eyes, it all struck something buried in her memory. She crouched down slightly, lowering her voice. "You're a handsome one, aren't you?" Ruger didn't move. Then, slowly, he approached her. His steps were deliberate, cautious. When he reached her, he sniffed her gloved hand once, twice. Then, without a sound, he sat down beside her leg. Cole blinked. He's never done that before. Maya's throat tightened. She took off one glove and placed her bare hand gently on Ruger's neck. "He looks almost exactly like Kilo," she whispered. "Who?" "My canine," she said quietly. 15 years ago. We worked the Northern Border Patrol. He died in a blast saving my partner. He had this same coat, same eyes, even the same scar under the chin." Cole frowned, stepping closer. "You're saying, what? They're related?" She gave a half smile, blinking hard. "Wouldn't surprise me. Kilo's bloodline was German Shepherd, registered through the military program at Fort Custer. They retired his line a decade ago, or so I thought." She ran her hand through Ruger's fur again. "Guess fate has a long memory." For a moment, all three of them stood in silence, the sheriff, the ex-builder, and the dog that somehow bridged their worlds. The air around them felt charged, like the mountain itself was listening. Finally, Maya stood. "Look, technically I'm supposed to bring the kid in and report the structure, but I've been in this job long enough to know paperwork doesn't fix broken people." She looked at Eli. "You feel safe here. He nodded immediately. Yes, Ma'am. Ruger found me. Her eyes softened. Then he knew what he was doing. Cole watched her carefully. You're not here to arrest us, are you? Maya shook her head. No, but I need to know what you're planning. This cabin, the land, it's not yours. The Bureau's been sniffing around these woods for months. They think someone's trying to reclaim abandoned property. Cole gestured toward the old foundation. This belonged to my father. His name was Barrett. He worked this land years ago before the government shut down his rehab project. He called it Haven Ridge. The name made Maya pause. Haven Ridge. She repeated softly. I remember that file. It was supposed to be a refuge for vets who couldn't reintegrate. Then the funding disappeared overnight. Yeah, Cole said, along with him. She studied him for a long moment. You think your father's still up here somewhere? I don't know, Cole said, glancing toward the woods, but I keep finding signs he never left. And this dog, he's been leading me to them. Ruger looked up at him, tail moving once. Maya exhaled, rubbing her hands together. You know, Barrett, there's something happening in these mountains. 2 days ago we found tire tracks from unmarked trucks near this ridge. Old tunnels sealed during the rehab project were reopened. Someone's digging for something. Records say it's private contractors, but they're too well armed for logging crews. Cole frowned. You think it's connected to Haven? I think it's exactly that. Ruger suddenly stiffened, ears snapping toward the forest. A low growl hummed in his chest. What is it, boy? Cole whispered. The sound came faint through the trees. Metal hitting rock. Then silence. Maya's hand went instinctively to her sidearm. We're not alone. Ruger bolted toward the tree line before Cole could stop him. Maya and Cole followed, snow breaking under their boots. They reached the edge of the woods just as Ruger stopped, hackles raised, barking into the darkness. No one visible, just a fresh set of footprints. Heavy boots, moving fast. Looks like your ridge isn't as empty as you thought, Maya said quietly. Cole glanced back at her, breath fogging. So what now? She looked at Ruger, then at the boy standing behind them in the cabin doorway. Now you stay put. Build your walls. Keep that kid safe. Let me find out who else is trespassing on your father's land. Cole hesitated. You'd really do that? She smiled faintly. You think I came up here just to write citations? That dog didn't choose me for nothing. Ruger barked once, short and sharp, as if to agree. Maya turned toward the woods, radio crackling faintly at her shoulder. Stay close to the fire tonight, she said over her shoulder. If they're coming back, they'll wait for dark. Cole watched her disappear into the trees, the snow swallowing her tracks almost instantly. Ruger stayed at the edge of the clearing, eyes following her until she was gone. Then he turned, walking back to Cole's side. Cole knelt, hand resting on the dog's neck. You knew her. Somehow you knew she was meant to find us. Ruger pressed his head against Cole's chest, silent, steady. Above them, the wind carried faint echoes through the valley. Footsteps or memory, it was hard to tell. But deep down, Cole understood. The past he thought was buried had only been waiting for the right moment and the right allies to surface. And Ruger had been guiding him toward it all along. The morning broke with a thin silver light seeping through the cracks of the rebuilt cabin. Frost clung to every surface, turning the world into a field of glass. Cole sat by the small fire, holding the folded map that had haunted him for days. Haven, written in faded ink at the center. Maya arrived just after sunrise, snow dusting her jacket. She dropped a thermos on the table and nodded toward the map. You finally looked at it? I've been trying to make sense of it, Cole said, smoothing the paper. The lines don't match any current survey grid. But look, this ridge, the creek, even the clearing we're standing on. It's all here. This was planned. Maya crouched beside him, tracing her gloved finger over a symbol etched near the bottom corner, a triangle surrounded by initials. HB, Haven Base. She exhaled sharply. Cole, I've seen this before. 10 years ago, back when I was a deputy, Bitterroot County tried to launch a rehabilitation project for veterans and displaced families. It was supposed to be built right here. Then it vanished. No records, no funding, nothing but whispers of corruption. Cole looked up, disbelief hardening into anger. My father worked for the Department of Reconstruction back then. He called this place a fresh start for the forgotten. Everyone thought he'd gone crazy building a home out here. Turns out he was trying to save people. He stood, pacing, energy building with every step. They called him a drunk, a dreamer. But maybe he was right. Maybe Haven was real. Eli watched from the corner, wide-eyed. Ruger lay at his feet, tail flicking slowly, eyes tracking every movement in the room. Maya leaned back against the wall, her tone measured. If what you're saying is true, then someone buried it. And if the Bureau of Land Administration's sniffing around again, they're not here to preserve history. They're here to erase it. As if on cue, Ruger's head lifted. His ears twitched toward the window. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Cole froze. You hear that? Outside, the crunch of tires over snow. Then voices. Maya moved to the door, peering through the gap. A convoy of white trucks was winding up the hill, official plates, tinted windows. Men in federal windbreakers stepped out, their breath steaming in the cold. Bureau of Land Administration. Maya muttered. Damn it, they move fast. Cole's jaw tightened. How'd they find us? Maybe they were already watching, she said. Ruger barked once, loud and sharp. The sound echoed through the valley like a gunshot. Eli flinched, but Cole's hand found the dog's collar. Easy, boy, not yet. 3 agents approached the cabin. The one in front, mid-40s, clean-cut, the kind of man who'd never worked a day outdoors, lifted a clipboard. Morning, he said coolly. We've had reports of illegal structures on federal property. You the one responsible? Cole stepped outside. This land belonged to my father. There's a record somewhere. The man smirked. That record doesn't exist anymore, which means you're squatting on protected land. Ruger moved to Cole's side, body rigid. His growl deepened, vibrating through the snow. The lead agent frowned. You'd better restrain your animal. Cole's voice stayed calm. He's the reason any of us are alive. Behind him, Eli came to the door, pale but standing tall. Maya positioned herself between the boy and the agents, her hand resting near her holster. You might want to step back, gentlemen. You're talking to a veteran on private grounds. Private. The man scoffed. Sheriff, this land's been under federal protection for over a decade. I'm sure your department doesn't want to interfere. That depends on what you plan to do here, Maya said. We plan to clear the site, he replied. And if anyone resists, we'll remove them for trespassing. Cole clenched his fists. This is my father's legacy. You're not bulldozing it because some paper in Washington says so. The agent's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, Mr. Barrett. Ruger barked again, louder this time. The agent took a step back. That dog needs to be put down before someone gets hurt. Maya's voice cut through the tension. Touch that dog and you'll have a county-wide investigation on your hands. The agent glared at her. You're out of your jurisdiction, Sheriff. Then maybe it's time someone rewrote the lines, she said. A heavy silence fell. Snow drifted between them, slow and soundless. Finally, the agents retreated to their vehicles. You have 14 days to vacate, the lead one said over his shoulder. After that, we'll come back with a warrant and a bulldozer." The engines roared to life, and the convoy rolled down the hill. When the sound faded, Cole exhaled, long and trembling. He sank onto the porch step, running a hand over Ruger's head. The dog leaned into him, warm and solid. Eli came closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You're not going to let them take it, right?" Cole didn't answer at first. His gaze drifted to the ridge, to the foundations his father had laid decades ago. All that history, all that pain, all buried under snow. "Maybe it's time to move on," he said finally. Eli's eyes hardened. "Move on? You told me to build something that lasts. You taught me to stand up. Now you're telling me to run?" The words hit harder than any blow. Cole looked at the boy, thin, stubborn, trembling, but standing firm. Ruger let out a low sound, not a growl this time, but something softer. Agreement. Cole swallowed hard. "You think I'm running?" Eli nodded. "If you leave now, you are." For a long moment, the wind was the only thing that spoke. Then Cole stood, shoulders squaring, resolve settling into his bones. "All right," he said quietly. "We stay, but if we're doing this, we do it right." Maya watched him, a small, proud smile breaking through her tired face. "Legal fight. Documentation. I can help you start it." Cole nodded. "Then let's make them listen." Ruger barked once, clear, certain, as if sealing the pact. As the three of them stood in the cold light, the mountain seemed to echo that bark back to them, a promise rising through the frost. Haven wasn't just a place on a map anymore, it was something living again, guarded by those who still believed it mattered. The fight for Haven began with a single file. Maya found it buried deep inside the archives of Bitterroot County Hall, a dusty metal cabinet stamped "Closed Projects, 1980-1985. Inside was a folder marked Haven Ridge Initiative. The hedges were yellowed, the ink faded, but the signature at the bottom was clear. B. Barrett, Cole's father. The document granted temporary stewardship and use of forest property for rehabilitation of veterans and homeless families, subject to review every 5 years. It had never been officially revoked, only suspended due to budget cuts. Maya stared at the paper, pulse quickening. 40 years, she whispered, and they'd just let it die. That afternoon, she drove her truck up the mountain, the file sitting on the passenger seat beside a steaming cup of coffee. When she reached the cabin, Cole and Eli were stacking wood near the porch, while Ruger patrolled the edge of the clearing, nose to the wind. Maya stepped out, waving the folder. "You're not trespassing," she said. "You're continuing what your father started." Cole took the file, flipping through the brittle pages. His father's handwriting filled the margins, names, supply lists, sketches of small cabins arranged in a circle like a community. He was building something bigger than I ever knew. Cole murmured. Eli leaned closer. "So it's legal." "Not yet," Maya said, "but it's winnable. If we can prove continuous intention of use, they can't evict you. We file for reactivation." Cole nodded slowly. "Let's do it." The next week was chaos wrapped in hope. Maya drove to Missoula, filing motions, requesting public records, and leaking select documents to a journalist she trusted, one who'd covered veterans' affairs. Within days, the story hit local news. Man and dog rebuild forgotten veterans' haven. The photograph came first. Ruger sitting in the snow, the mountains rising behind him, his eyes locked on the camera. The caption beneath read, "He didn't bark for food, he barked for home." Within 24 hours, it went viral. Veterans groups across the country shared it, tagging Chalk Haven Ridge and EU Stand for Ruger. People sent donations, blankets, solar kits, even handwritten letters. The photo touched something raw in America's heart: loyalty, loss, and the quiet dignity of rebuilding from nothing. Reporters began camping at the base of the ridge, their vans lining the road. Cole hated the attention, but Maya told him it was their best weapon. The more people see, the harder it is for them to erase you again. One morning, as the sun broke over the peaks, a crew from Helena News arrived. They filmed Cole repairing the roof with Eli's help, Ruger standing guard below. The anchor's voice trembled slightly as she introduced the piece. In the mountains of Montana, a man, his adopted son, and a shepherd named Ruger are rebuilding more than wood and stone. They're rebuilding what it means to come home. Maya watched the segment from her office, the phone ringing non-stop. Veterans called offering testimony. Old builders claimed they'd once worked under B. Barrett's command. One woman mailed in a black and white photo, Cole's father standing beside a wooden sign that read, "Haven Ridge, where the broken build again." Cole held the photo that night by the fire. The edges crumbled between his fingers. He wasn't running from something, he said quietly. He was trying to finish it. Ruger nudged his knee, eyes warm in the firelight. 2 weeks later, the Bureau of Land Administration returned, this time with cameras watching. Maya stood at the gate, flanked by reporters and half the county's veterans. Cole was beside her, documents in hand. The lead official, the same man who'd once ordered them to vacate, looked uneasy under the flashing lenses. "Mr. Barrett," he began, "our records still show this property as inactive federal land." Maya cut him off, her voice sharp. "Inactive doesn't mean void. You're standing on a registered rehabilitation site, established by federal grant under Program 14B, signed by your agency in 1983. She held up the folder. "I have the proof. You can verify the signatures yourself." The official hesitated. Cameras zoomed in. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cole took a step forward. "You tried to erase my father's work, but this place was built for people who'd already been erased once. We're not leaving." Ruger barked once, loud, precise, commanding silence. The official's gaze shifted, his authority faltering under the weight of a single animal's stare. He finally exhaled, lowering his clipboard. "We'll escalate this to review," he said. "No demolition until a ruling is made." That was all they needed. Over the next month, the case exploded online. Newspapers printed Ruger's photo beside headlines like, "A dog's loyalty sparks a legal battle for the forgotten." Talk shows invited Maya to speak. She didn't care for fame, but she told the truth. This isn't about land. It's about what people lose when the world stops listening. By late spring, the Federal Review concluded. The government reinstated Haven Ridge as a protected veteran rehabilitation site, granting Cole full stewardship as its caretaker. The news broke on a bright morning. Cole was repairing the front steps when Maya's truck climbed the hill, horn blaring. She jumped out, waving a fresh set of papers. "It's official," she said, grinning. They recognized it. Haven Ridge lives again. Eli whooped, tossing his hammer into the air. Ruger barked, tail whipping like a flag. Cole didn't speak right away. He walked to the edge of the clearing, looking out at the valley his father once dreamed of. The wind carried the smell of pine and smoke, the sound of new life being built on old ground. He knelt beside Ruger, resting a hand on his thick fur. "You did it, boy. You brought us home." Ruger leaned into him, head pressed against Cole's chest. That night, the fire burned higher than ever before. Maya sat beside them, Eli asleep under a blanket near the hearth. Outside, the stars spilled over the ridge, reflected in the melting snow. Cole looked toward the mountains. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think losing everything was the end. But maybe it was the only way to find where I was meant to start." Maya smiled, eyes glistening. "Your father would have been proud." Ruger lifted his head, watching the horizon as if listening for something beyond sight. His breath steamed in the cold air, steady and strong. In the distance, a wolf howled, a sound both lonely and whole. Ruger answered with a single bark that echoed across the valley, not of warning, but of belonging. And for the first time in decades, Haven Ridge truly lived again. A year had passed since Haven Ridge was restored, but to Cole Barrett it felt like both a lifetime and a single breath. The mountain had changed. What was once a desolate ridge of ruins and frozen silence now buzzed with life. Smoke rose gently from the chimneys of newly built cabins. Laughter carried on the wind. Voices. Music. The sound of people healing. The front gate bore a new sign, carved from the same timber his father once hauled up the slope. Haven Ridge, where the broken build again. Cole stood by that gate every morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun bleed through the valley. Ruger sat at his side, grey creeping through his muzzle, eyes sharp as ever. Eli was taller now, shoulders broader, his energy restless but grounded. He spent his days teaching woodworking to the younger residents, runaways, veterans, and survivors who'd come to find refuge. Maya ran logistics, splitting her time between the sheriff's office and Haven Ridge, handling paperwork and donations. Together, they were building something that no one could take away. Ruger had become the soul of the place. Everyone knew his patrol routes, the slow circuit he made each dawn, checking every fence, every door, every corner of the community. Children followed him like shadows, laughing as his tail brushed their knees. When he barked, people listened. When he rested by the fire, the whole camp seemed to settle. It was late autumn when a yellow school bus wound its way up the dirt road, tires crunching over gravel. A class of middle school students stepped off, led by a teacher in a thick scarf. Field trip, Haven Ridge Rehabilitation Site, she told Cole with a warm smile. They're writing essays about American heroes. Cole chuckled. Heroes? You might be disappointed. She smiled. Maybe not. The kids fanned out across the clearing, snapping pictures and whispering to each other. Ruger trotted toward them, tail wagging lazily. One boy, maybe 10 years old, crouched to pet him. Is that the dog from the story? He asked, eyes wide. Cole looked down at Ruger. Older now, slower but still holding himself with that quiet dignity that only time and loyalty can forge. The dog met his gaze for a long moment before turning his eyes back toward the ridge, scanning it like he always did. Cole smiled. Yeah, he said softly. That's him. What's his name? The boy asked. Ruger, Cole answered. He didn't bark for food. He barked for what others couldn't see. The teacher's expression softened. What does that mean? Cole's gaze wandered toward the tree line, where sunlight streamed through the pines. Sometimes, he said, the world overlooks things that matter. Places like this. People like him. But Ruger, he always knew what was worth protecting, even when no one else did. The group fell quiet. The boy scratched Ruger's ear, smiling. The dog leaned in, accepting the affection with a tired sigh. By noon, the children had scattered through the cabins, taking notes and asking questions. Eli showed them the woodworking shed, explaining how each person built their own space. Maya walked them through the greenhouse where vegetables grew in rows, fed by recycled snowmelt. When they left, one of the girls handed Cole a folded drawing, a crayon sketch of Ruger sitting on the ridge, the mountains behind him. At the bottom, she'd written, "He guards dreams." That night, the community gathered for dinner. They sat on benches beneath strings of lights, sharing stew and laughter. Cole sat beside Maya and Eli, watching the firelight dance in their eyes. Ruger lay near his feet, dozing lightly, ears twitching whenever someone moved too close. Maya raised her cup. "To Ruger," she said. Everyone joined in. "To Ruger!" The sound echoed through the valley. Later, after most had gone to bed, Cole and Maya walked to the memorial at the edge of the clearing. A polished stone stood there now, engraved with names. Those who had built Haven Ridge. Those who had found peace there, and one line at the bottom that caught the light of the moon. He didn't bark for food. He barked for what others couldn't see. Cole brushed a hand over the carving, his voice low. "You did it, old friend. You kept your promise." Behind him, Ruger limped closer, his steps slow but steady. He lowered himself beside Cole, head resting on the man's boot. "You're still watching over us, huh?" Cole murmured. The dog's tail thumped once. Eli joined them a moment later, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "We're getting new residents next week," he said. "2 vets from Oregon, 1 single mum with a baby. I told them about Ruger." Cole smiled faintly. "Let's hope they're ready for his inspection." Eli grinned. "He's tougher than any sheriff." Maya chuckled quietly, arms crossed. "I'll take that as a compliment." A gust of wind rolled through, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. The night sky shimmered with stars, each one reflecting in Ruger's fading eyes. Cole looked out over the cabins, their windows glowing in the dark. "You know," he said softly, "Dad used to say every place worth saving has a heartbeat. I think we finally found ours." Maya nodded. "And he's got 4 legs." Ruger stirred, lifting his head for a moment before settling again. The world seemed to hum around them, alive, whole, forgiven. Weeks later, the community gathered once more to dedicate the final memorial at the entrance to Haven Ridge. The stone stood tall, the same kind his father once worked with, carved with Ruger's likeness, a shepherd watching the mountains, eyes alert. Beneath it, the quote Cole had spoken that day to the schoolchildren was etched in bronze. He didn't bark for food. He barked for what others couldn't see. Visitors touched the plaque as they passed, some whispering thanks, some simply standing in silence. Ruger still made his patrols, slower now, stopping more often to rest. But every time someone new arrived, broken, lost, searching, he was the first to greet them. And though time would eventually take its toll, his spirit had already rooted itself deep in the soil of Haven Ridge. A living reminder that courage doesn't always roar. It sometimes walks quietly beside you, watching, guarding, believing. The ridge had become what it was always meant to be, not a refuge from the world, but a place that taught it how to heal. The morning broke soft and pale, a thin mist curling between the pines. Frost sparkled on every branch, like shards of glass catching the first light. Haven Ridge was silent, except for the faint creak of wood and the slow, steady hum of life waking up. Cole Barrett pushed open the cabin door with a mug of coffee in hand. The air was cold enough to sting his lungs, the kind of cold that made every breath feel sacred. He looked down the porch steps. Ruger was there, lying just where he always did, head turned toward the tree line as if watching over the valley. "Morning, boy," Cole said, voice low. Ruger didn't move. His body was still, peaceful. The frost had settled along his fur, glinting like silver threads. For a long moment, Cole just stood there, unable to speak. Then he set the mug down, knelt beside his oldest friend, and laid a hand on his head. "You can rest now, boy," he whispered. There were no tears, just a quiet heaviness in the air, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. The dog had gone exactly the way he had lived, calm, watchful, loyal to the end. When Eli found them an hour later, he froze in the doorway. "He's gone?" Cole nodded. "In his sleep, still guarding the ridge." Maya arrived soon after, her breath catching when she saw Ruger. She knelt beside Cole, her hand resting gently on the dog's paw. "He never stopped watching, did he?" "No," Cole said softly. "He never did." They buried him that afternoon on the rise overlooking the cabins, the same spot where Ruger loved to sit at dusk and listen to the wind. The community gathered in silence, veterans, children, workers, all standing shoulder to shoulder under a grey sky. Eli read from a small slip of paper he'd written the night before. He found us when we were lost. He taught us that loyalty doesn't end when the world turns its back. He was the heart of Haven Ridge. When it was over, Cole placed Ruger's worn collar on a wooden post at the head of the grave. The brass tag clinked softly in the wind. By the next morning, the community had built a small marker, hand-carved, simple, perfect. It bore a single line that Cole had chosen himself, the same words he'd once said to a curious boy a year ago. He didn't bark for food. He barked for what others couldn't see. As the weeks passed, Haven Ridge carried on. The cabins filled with new faces, men and women still learning to heal, children who'd never known safety until now. At night, the fires still burned, and sometimes, when the wind rolled down from the ridge, people swore they could hear it, the faint echo of a bark, steady and strong, drifting through the valley like an old promise. Cole took over Ruger's morning patrols. It wasn't the same. His boots didn't tread as lightly, his hearing wasn't as sharp, but he kept to the route. It was what Ruger would have wanted. One evening, as the sun fell behind the mountains, a visitor arrived, a teenage girl clutching a rescue pup with oversized paws and timid eyes. "They said this place takes in strays," she said. Cole smiled. "We do." The little shepherd pup squirmed, sniffing the ground where Ruger used to lie. Then, without hesitation, he walked up the porch steps and sat by Cole's side, facing the forest like he already understood. Maya stood behind him, smiling through quiet tears. "Guess the ridge found a new guardian." Cole looked out across the valley, the sky awash in orange and gold. Maybe the old one sent him. That night, Eli engraved a new line beneath Ruger's memorial, "Still guarding." A year later, when visitors came to Haven Ridge, they often stopped at that spot first. They read the words, traced the carvings, and sometimes left a token, a dog tag, a photo, a folded note. And when they asked, "Is that the dog from the story?" Cole would smile, pointing toward the cabin porch where the new shepherd now kept watch. "He didn't bark for food," Cole would say softly. "He barked for what others couldn't see." The camera drifts back from the ridge, rising over the valley. Cabins glow under the setting sun. The new shepherd lies at the gate, head lifted, ears alert, watching the forest like his predecessor once did. Wind sweeps across the mountaintop, carrying the faint echo of a bark through the snow. And then, as the frame widens, the screen fades to black. Text appears. "He didn't bark for food. He barked for what others couldn't see." What's your story with a loyal pet? Voiceover. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to German Shepherd Stories, where every bark, every scar, and every act of loyalty finds its voice, because some heroes walk on 4 legs, and they're still guarding.